Hey, how you doing? Welcome to my second office. We've been talking about how COVID-19 is going to change society and how it's going to introduce new language. So, for example, we talked about how social distancing was a thing. And by the way, I think social distancing should be the new way we break up with people. Hey, I don't think we should see each other anymore. I think we should just social distance. I think it feels a little nicer than saying, it's not me, it's you, or it's you, it's me. I don't know. Either way, but new language has been added to our criteria. Well, here's the thing too. There's another word that people have been using a lot, and that's essential. Right. So recently, the government announced what essential services were. And so what happened was people went online and say, okay, what stores are going to remain open, what stores are going to be closed. And what it was interesting is that it almost seemed as if you could read the what would have been easier. What would have been easier to say is, hey, what would have been non-essential? Because it almost seemed like everything was essential and everything was going to stay open, except for clothing stores and whatnot. But basically, this conversation of what's essential. So when I first planted Uptown Community Church, this is a number of years ago. I started delivering milk, and I delivered milk because I wanted to provide for my family and pay the bills, which is a good thing. And I remember one time I was at a conference, I can't remember where, and I was telling somebody who I was, and I said, oh yeah, I'm a church planter, and I just planted a church, and Uptown Community Church, and they're like, oh great. I said, oh yeah, I'm also a milkman. And they went, what? And I said, yeah, I'm a milkman. And they kind of looked at me and they kind of gave me this kind of like, that look you give people when you're not really happy with what they've said, or you're trying to say to them like, oh, I'm here for you. They kind of like the person that like that kind of a look. Well, they gave me that look. He's like, well, I'm sorry, hopefully if your church gets bigger, then, you won't be a milkman. So what's interesting is that during COVID-19, EB Manor Milk, which is the company I work for, we're an essential service, so I'm delivering milk. It's interesting, cows don't know it's COVID-19 and they're still producing milk, so milk seems to be delivered. But I love the conversation about what's essential, right? So right now I'm broadcasting in the back of my milk truck, and right behind me is thousands of liters of the best tasting milk, and this camera is actually propped up on a crate, a skid of chocolate milk, which, as everyone knows, EB Manor chocolate milk, the best. But the conversation is what's essential? What's essential to you? If I was to say to you, you have 1 minute to grab everything you can, and then you're gonna leave your home and never come back again. And many refugees could actually make that statement, saying, when we fled our home, this is what we took. And I always thought to myself, what's essential? Like if I was told that I would never go home again, or if I was told that I get to choose what was shut down, what's not, what's essential? And I thought, that's a really interesting conversation. But what's interesting? God has been asking us this same question for many years. Not just many years, thousands of years. Like, what do you think is important? What do you think is essential? And what's interesting is humanity has always made the wrong decision. We've said things like, well, pleasure is essential, or this is essential, that's essential. And God's like, you know what? That's not as essential as you think it is. And what God always seemed to look at is the state of our souls. So what's interesting is in our culture today, we have a lot of things that we think is important. And I don't want to say to someone, what's not important, what is important. But I do want to say is that oftentimes a lot of the things that we think are important are not as important as we think they are. And we don't really know that until we have to choose what's essential or what's important, what's not important. So, in the essential services, we want to make sure people can get food. Food's essential. I like food. We also say, gasoline, you need to, your cars, we say medical care, and drugs and that's essential, right? But what's not essential? Well, movie theaters might not be essential. It's like, oh, okay, entertainment. Entertainment's not as essential as you think it is. But it's like, are you sure entertainment's not as essential? Because people are on Netflix a whole lot right now. But movie theaters shut down, and other things we did, like clothing stores, they shut down as well too, and places where people didn't need to go. And so we were told, and we were shown what's essential. Well, God tells us what's really essential in our lives is Him. And I know that sounds kind of weird, and it almost seems a little bit minimalistic. But what God says to us is that what's really essential is me. And everything else that you have is secondary. So what's interesting is, in the Bible, there's a phrase that's used, and Jesus uses it, and he says to his disciples, says to his followers, Unless you hate mother and brother, father and sister, husband and wife, you cannot be my disciple. You cannot be my follower. Now, the word hate, and you have to understand what Jesus is saying here. To the Hebrew, to the Jewish context, hate means to love less, right? And so, for example, when Jesus tells his disciples, you have to hate all these important relationships. He's not saying to them, you have to hate your mother and father, although you might. You're not supposed to hate your siblings, you might. You're not supposed to hate your spouse, and again, you're not supposed to. But what you are supposed to do is you're supposed to love them less than Jesus. Because Jesus knows that unless he's the priority, he always gets bumped out, he always gets knocked out from the things that we think are so important. And so Jesus says, you have to love all these things less. And I think right now in COVID-19, we are being taught how to love things less and love things more. Heaven forbid that anybody you know should contract COVID-19. But in that moment of hearing a positive diagnosis where someone says, yeah, I actually have it, the first thing that comes to mind is not that the movie theaters are closed, not that these places of pleasure and entertainment are not working anymore, but it's for their health and their well-being. You care about them. That's what's important. Well, God says, you know what? In the physical realm, the physical reality that we live in, there's so many things that we think are important, but the only thing that's important is God. Because God is the only thing that transcends life to death. Easter is upon us, and I've been working through an Easter series for Uptown, but also been thinking about Easter, reflecting on it, and Sharice's video yesterday on the Passover really kind of helped focus that. But Easter is this idea that there's only one person in history that has gone past the curtain of life to death, but then come back. Like nobody has ever done that. No one's ever moved from life to death to life again. And Jesus did that. And what he kind of tells us when he came back to us is that it's okay. Through every step of your life, I'll walk with you. And in the last step of life, from life to death, I'll walk with you as well too. And so Jesus tells us what's really essential is him. And honestly, COVID-19 has reminded us that life is fragile. Control is an illusion. And I think to myself, I can't control. Like we're hand sanitizing, we're washing hands, we're social distancing, we're quarantining, we're doing all these things. But at the end of the day, we just don't know. And so at the end of the day, all I can say is, God, all I have is you. You are all I have. The psalmist, not just the psalmist, David, some of David's most beautiful psalms was written when he was in the cave, hiding for his life from Saul. And I think it's so interesting that in those caves, in the times of fear of death, in those times of fearing our life being taken from us by somebody else, the most beautiful worship pours out of us. COVID-19 is teaching us what's essential. COVID-19 is teaching us what is important. And I'm hoping that maybe at the end of this journey, whenever the quarantine lifts, that when we emerge from our cocoons, our homes, that perhaps that we will remember these lessons. That we won't just jump into the frivolity, the distractions that the world has to offer, but instead that we would say, this is what's really important. What's really important is God, and what's really important is one another, and everything else is kind of periphery to that. I'm amazed at how the world has changed, how fast it's changed, and how we have no path, no guide forward in regards to how we're going to move forward in this and what life's going to look like after this. But I'm so glad to know that God is not surprised by COVID-19. God is not taken aback. God's like, oh, I didn't see that coming. But instead, God is with us. He walks with us. He journeys with us. And that whatever we're experiencing, he is right there with us. And that in the fear, the anxiety, the uncertainty, God goes with us. The psalmist says, whom have I in heaven but you? And nothing on this earth I desire except for you. And I've kind of been making that my prayer lately, that nothing in this world I desire except for God. And nothing on this earth, whatever pleasures, whatever entertainment, can equal the profound sacredness, the awe-inspiringness of God's presence. Thanks so much for listening from the back of my truck. Hey, take a look here. That's a lot of milk there. And there's the famous chocolate milk. So, don't forget to help yourself to that. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for being with us. Remember, be safe. Take care of yourself. Take care of one another. And always remember, if Uptown Community Church, if we can help you in any way during this time, please let us know. And always don't forget, you are isolated, not alone. Thanks so much for joining me. Blessings. Have a great day.